And finally, we'll wrap up this chapter by looking at spinal reflexes. So a reflex arc is the nerve pathway responsible for generating a response to a stimulus. So what is a reflex? Well, it is a reaction to a stimulus. It is involuntary. It is predictable. We know what's going to happen. It's automatic and uncontrollable. So all reflexes have several things in common. First of all, there has to be a stimulus to activate the receptor. So in this image, you've got a nail stuck in the skin. Whew, that's a stimulus, right? So is this a sensory or a motor neuron? Well, if it's receiving the stimulus, it's sensory, but you could also look at the pathway. It's running through the dorsal root into the spinal cord. Dorsal is sensory. Now, that nerve signal is propagated all along the sensory neuron into the spinal cord, where it is processed by interneurons that then activate a nerve impulse of a motor neuron out to the effector, which is the muscle that will remove the body part from that painful stimulus. Now, no matter what the stimulus, this pathway is the same. But I want you to notice right here, this interneuron, you see there, it's activating that motor neuron by depolarizing it, but at the same time, it's sending a nerve impulse through an ascending tract up to the brain. So the brain knows, hey, something's causing me pain. When we classify reflexes, well, is it spinal or is it cranial? Well, if it's processed in the spinal cord, it's a spinal reflex. If it's processed in the brain, it's a cranial reflex. Is it somatic or is it visceral? Somatic means voluntary, usually going to be something to do with skeletal muscle. Visceral, is it coming from an organ? Cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, gland. Is it monosynaptic or polysynaptic? Monosynaptic. What do you think that means? One synapse. So it has one sensory neuron and one motor neuron. Does not have an interneuron because that would make it 3 neurons. That's more than mono. That would make 2 synapses. Now, sometimes there are more. So look at this one. There's 1 neuron, 2 neurons, 3 neurons, but there's 1 synapse here, 2 synapse, another synapse there. So that is polysynaptic. Now, if you took the purple one out and your sensory neuron synapsed directly with your motor neuron, that would be monosynaptic, 1 synapse. Then we want to look at, is it ipsilateral or contralateral? Are the receptor and the effector on the same side of the body or opposite sides of the body? So what that means is if you step on something sharp with your left foot, okay, is the pain, the stimulus, and the effector on the same side of the body? Are you moving the same side? Sure. Well, if you step on something sharp and you move that side of the body where you stepped on it, that's ipsilateral, same side. Contralateral means the opposite side is causing the action. Is it innate or is it acquired? Were you born with that reflex or did you develop it after birth? And here you can see an example of what I just tried to show you on that much smaller picture. So monosynaptic reflex, the sensory neuron comes in the sensory root, and in the gray matter of the spinal cord, it synapses directly with the motor neuron that causes the effector to move. Okay, so that is monosynaptic, 1 synapse. Polysynaptic, well, we're touching something hot. The sensory neuron detects it, runs through the sensory root of the spinal cord, of the spinal nerve, into the gray matter, where it synapses with an interneuron, that's one synapse. The interneuron then synapses with the motor neuron, that's two. The motor neuron then causes an action, okay? So that is polysynaptic because there are two synapses. There are four common spinal reflexes: stretch, Golgi tendon, withdrawal, and crossed extensor. The ones that involve the proprioceptors are the stretch reflexes and the tendon reflexes. Now remember, proprioceptors are going to be found in joints, muscles, and tendons, and they specifically detect changes to those structures, such as stretch or tension in muscle when your muscle is contracting or stretching. A muscle spindle is a proprioceptor that detects changes in the stretch within a muscle, so it's also known as a stretch receptor. Now when it is stretched, the spindle's sensory axon fires an impulse, and those impulses are conducted to the spinal cord. A stretch reflex is a contraction of a muscle after it's stretched, and that stretch is detected by a muscle spindle proprioceptor. So when it's stretched, the spindle sensory axon is going to fire an impulse, and those impulses are conducted through the spinal cord. So the muscle is stretched, sensory nerve fires an impulse that goes into the spinal cord. Now, the sensory axons are going to excite motor neurons on the same side of the spinal cord and the same side of the body. So the motor neurons excite muscles, causing contraction on the same side of the body where the muscle was stretched. Now, this is a monosynaptic pathway. Now, at the same time this is happening, the sensory neuron is also going to excite interneurons that are going to prohibit muscles from contracting that are antagonistic. Okay, so we call that polysynaptic reciprocal inhibition. Boy, that's a heck of a term, isn't it? Now, your stretch receptors can be classified as spinal, somatic, monosynaptic, ipsilateral, and innate. Whew, that's a lot. So think about what those terms mean. Spinal reflex, it's processed in the spinal cord. Somatic, a voluntary muscle. Monosynaptic, one synapse. Ipsilateral, same side. Innate, you're born with it. All right, our second is the tendon reflex or Golgi tendon reflex. It is going to work to prevent your muscles from contracting excessively. So your Golgi tendon organs detect excessive tension. Their axons are then going to fire a nerve impulse that will stimulate the interneurons of the spinal cord. Some of those excited interneurons are going to inhibit motor neurons of the same muscle. Well, what's that going to do? Prevent them from contracting. So the muscle relaxes. That's a polysynaptic reflex, and it prevents that muscle from overstretching and getting damaged. Some of those interneurons are going to be excited, and those are going to excite the antagonistic muscle, which is a reciprocal activation. Then the antagonistic muscles contract, and that is a polysynaptic reflex. So just a quick little look here. So here we've got our receptor, that's your Golgi tendon organ. So muscle contraction increases the tension on the tendons, and that's detected by the tendon receptor or Golgi tendon organ. Now that's going to fire a nerve impulse. That muscle contracts and stimulates the nerve to fire an impulse. It's processed in the spinal cord. Now what's going to happen? This red motor neuron is coming right out here to your quads, and it causes relaxation because of the tension on the tendon. At the same time, we're going to fire an impulse on this motor neuron that's going out to the antagonistic muscles. Those are going to contract. So it's causing relief or relaxation on the quads and contraction on the hams. Again, reciprocal activation. These two, the withdrawal or flexor reflex and the crossed extensor tend to go together. So we're going to consider them together and then we'll look at the image. So withdrawal, you know that means to come away from, right? So it pulls the body part away from a painful stimulus. That stimulus excites a nocisensory neuron. Nociceptors detect pain. So it sends that signal to the spinal cord, which excites the interneurons that then excite the motor neurons of the flexors. So like your hamstrings. When you excite the hamstrings, they're going to contract and your foot's pulled up. Okay? Now, simultaneously, other neurons are going to inhibit motor neurons of the extensors. Now, let's think about that. So the quadriceps are going to relax. Okay? That allows that withdrawal to happen very quickly. At the same time that's happening, we're going to have the crossed extensor reflex. So some of the interneurons get excited by that nociceptor sensory neuron, and it's going to cross the midline and excite the extensors on the other side. So when you withdraw the left leg, the right leg quadriceps muscles are going to be excited. Okay? So that means that muscle is going to hold still. So you're going to move the left leg. Well, what happens if you don't keep that right leg extended? You're going to fall. So it allows the opposite side of the body from the side that's being hurt. So if you're hurting on the left, the right side is going to be able to support your body. So let's look at that in a quick little image, and here you can see it. Okay? So right here, we've got a sensory neuron detecting that painful stimulus, firing a nerve impulse in through the sensory root of the spinal nerve. And then we got a bunch of stuff going on here. All right, let's see what's happening. So if we follow the pathway, let's go right here first. The interneuron excites the motor neuron out to the flexors. Now, these flexors are coming out, and when they contract, it pulls your foot and leg away from that painful stimulus. That's withdrawal. At the same time, that sensory neuron is going to synapse with an interneuron that crosses the midline, okay? So that's contralateral. That motor neuron then is going to go out and stimulate the hamstrings of the opposite leg. And basically it says, hey dude, hold us up because we're pulling the other one up, okay? All right, we'll end this chapter with a short little look at reflex testing. So reflexes are very useful for diagnosis because, again, they're unpredictable, or they are predictable. Sorry, not unpredictable. They're predictable. We know what's going to happen if that stimulus is applied. So we can test function of specific muscles, nerves, and spinal segments by using several different devices, such as a reflex hammer to tap just below your patella. So on that patellar tendon, you should have a reflexive little kick out of the lower part of the leg. Now we know what's supposed to happen, so we can test using that. Stimulate that nerve and see what happens. So if you have a hypoactive reflex, that means you're not responding enough. Your response is diminished or absent. Well, this could indicate that you've got damage to the spinal cord, you've got something going on with the muscle, or perhaps it's something at the neuromuscular junction. A hyperactive reflex, well, that would be basically you kick the person with the reflex hammer in the head, right? So it's an overactive reflex, and that is abnormally strong. Well, this can indicate that the brain or the spinal cord, especially if accompanied by clonus, which is a rhythmic oscillating movement with that reflex test. So that can indicate that there's damage to the brain or the spinal cord. So really what it does is show you, hey, there's something going on that's not right. Let's figure it out, because the reflexive actions are either too much or too little.